This episode of The Only Podcast About Movies was recorded a little bit ago, but we figured we'd hold it until now because, well, with Father's Day just behind us, it seemed very appropriate. Just wanted to let you know there might be some disparities in your timetable and yada, 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 yada. Anyway, enjoy the show. What is up, Internet? Let me tell you about flannel. It gets me hot. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And she's not just selling tuna, son. She's selling America. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the 1983 classic comedy, Mr. Mom.
Mr. Mom. Did you pick it because of who I am?
I didn't know I should, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I didn't pick this. Our illustrious guest picked this.
I know.
Shahir.
We've got someone else in the room with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, director of many a show you've seen on television like Girl Code, some sketches on John Oliver, and episodes of Adam Ruins Everything, one of my favorite people I've ever met working in television, and one hell of an Escape the Room partner, Miss Laura Murphy.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
How are you?
I'm pretty excited that Mr. Mom is finally getting the credit.
Getting the love that it
too, yeah.
Do you think it's up for a remake? It's like remake material?
No, it should stay as is. Just hearing you guys yell the quotes got me excited.
Got you pumped?
It deserves this.
So, Laura, you wanted to. You're only in town for a little bit for some gigs from LA, and I said I need to get you on this podcast. We've been trying for a little bit, and I wanted to say what did you want to talk about? What films were important to you? And this was at the top of your list.
This is the one.
I basically said it's this, or I think I had a backup, but it was like I really want to talk. about Mr. Mom.
You texted me 2 or 3, and then you said, "But really, Mr. Mom," and I was like, "All right."
I've been dying to talk about this for years.
And here we are.
You know, it's funny. There's a lot of like on projects when, you guys know when you're working on a project, there'll be like a table read or some sort of big pre-pro meeting where everybody goes around the table and somebody always is like, everybody has to say their favorite number or their favorite. And often it's what's your favorite movie?
Yeah.
And people will always say like, something by Truffaut or something with
the Shahirs of the room will name
something obscure.
Art garbage.
Yeah. Something with what's her name who pair in it. Yeah. And I just always say Mr. Mom, and I don't think people, and then nobody respects me for the rest of the job. I'm just kidding. But it is, for whatever reason, I feel like it's shaped my life to some degree.
Here's the thing. I'm a fan of you as a director. I love the immigration sketch on Adam Ruins Everything. I'm a big fan of Adam Ruins Everything.
Yeah, that show's so fun to work
It's so well put together. And we've never met before, but I think I've actually probably edited some of your work at some point. I don't know when.
Probably did you ever work Girl Code?
I worked some of I've been around. I'm sure I would have touched something.
Hear that? Shahir's been around.
I think, some of the sketches for Girl Code,
So I'm a big fan of you as a director. Do you think
I'm a big fan of your voice and accent in this podcast?
Well, thank you. I work really hard on it. And normally I just sound like this. No, but how do you think Mr. Mom or any movie reflects your work as a director?
Oh, wow. It's funny because I don't remember the first time I saw the movie, but I know I was young and my parents had it it might have been like a family movie night.
Oh, sure.
So I think the first time, what I remember about it is that it's the first time I fell in love with Michael Keaton, and who's so consistently good.
Yeah, amazing.
And I revisited the movie later, and then also I feel like that put me on a track of watching other Michael Keaton movies, which then led me to Night Shift, which is his first movie, and Ron Howard's first directing movie.
Yeah.
And I think there's something about Michael Keaton and comedy pacing that I feel like has somewhat, it's the pacing of dialogue and his delivery that has informed to some degree the comedy that I like and the comedy that I would try to make.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is you mentioned two people there that I think is the nexus of of when I love Michael Keaton is Michael Keaton and Ron Howard. And the movie I love is The Paper. Have you seen The Paper?
You know what? I don't remember it if I did.
Okay, that to
And
me,
you know what? I thought I saw almost every Michael Keaton, but I have to rewatch The Paper.
I think it's honestly, I think it's the best movie Ron Howard's ever made, and he's made some really great movies. Yeah, I love this movie
Because I have not seen this either.
Unabashedly, I think The Paper is just a masterpiece, and I kind of think it's the best thing that Michael Keaton's ever been in, and Michael Keaton's been in a lot of great things. It's kind of a more funny version of Spotlight, if you want to think about it that way.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's also quite
but it's also a good film. Is
It's
that
it's a dramedy.
he and I have a thing about Spotlight. I love Spotlight. Apparently, Matt has
I
no
love
taste.
Spotlight.
I hate Spotlight.
Really?
Yeah.
You know what? I don't. I hate it
No,
for
no,
its
no, no,
praise.
Matt,
Straight up.
Matt, you've said you hate Spotlight.
I hate Spotlight.
Not just on this podcast.
I know. I hate Spotlight, but
Because
more
you knew
so.
how it was going to end.
No. Titanic. No.
There was not enough spotlights.
There's not enough spotlights. No, I just there's only so many times I can watch 6 feet of dolly track get pushed. No, but the real reason is because it got so much praise. I feel like it doesn't deserve. I think it's an average baseline film. I don't think it's.
I think the script was amazing, and I think the performances were amazing. I don't know if it does. Did it won Best Picture, right?
It won
Yes,
Best
it did.
Picture.
I would say you are right visually and from a directing standpoint. It was a solid movie, and that dude had just made that Adam Sandler movie, The Cobbler.
Yeah.
And so comparatively, this was a
And he
masterpiece.
did the Station Agent. And
Yeah,
he did,
the Station Agent was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's a super talented guy. But I think the script and the performances were so good that it maybe got more credit as a full.
I also like it
360-degree
because
Best Picture.
Well, I actually like the directing style because I think the whole point of the way that film is put together is to underplay any flourish that
That's
you could
true.
have. It's basically like let's put the story front and center
and to knock away anything that makes it interesting to.
to people who aren't paying attention to the script.
No, but to your point, I agree. That's a really
I think it's
good way to say
masterfully
it.
directed.
It's really hard to do that.
Yeah, it's-
as a director, it's actually a challenge, and I think a lot of directors have trouble doing it. To put the story first.
Yeah.
And to not fall prey to fun camera tricks that you could do in the moment that make sense scene by scene, especially if you're shooting something out of order.
Yeah.
You're in the moment of the scene and you're like, it'd be cool that we should have right now.
Of course.
It's like think about Zodiac versus Spotlight. Zodiac is all about, okay, we're kind of bored with these scenes. Let's make them flourishy.
Yeah.
And David Finch is a master of that. But I think the Spotlight is really, really
It's
well directed.
restrained.
Yeah,
it is well done, restrained directing.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna. You both
Kroll
aren't gonna
hates.
convince me, and I'm not gonna convince
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
And we're not here to talk about Spotlight.
No, but I am really glad I've gotten involved in one of your
One of our
very
feuds.
respectful arguments.
We
that
do
you
have incredibly respectful
Yeah,
arguments.
you do.
If you want to get involved in our respectful
Oh,
arguments,
yeah!
you can reach us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter and tell us why you think Spotlight was masterfully directed and Matt has no taste. Also, you can leave us a review on iTunes. We really appreciate those. Also, subscribe to us on iTunes is really helpful as well to spread the word on the podcast.
Yeah, please, and also review us on there. We love stars. Shahir, I mean, I know Shahir
I feel like
does
I
have
set up that throw
a little bit.
perfectly
You did
without realizing
a little
it.
bit of
Matt's
dripping.
got to get the last word in here, though.
A little bit of dripping pretension on there, which is fine. I soak it up. I soak it up into my skin. It's like a moisturizer. But we really appreciate it. So please keep those reviews coming.
Right.
Mr. Mom.
This is what
Mr.
I'm interested in. Even I really liked kind of the question that you said, Shahir. I'm going to go from insulting you to complimenting you. Like that. There's something about films. What most people would consider odd films that shaped us and shaped our either sensibilities based on what was there or what was missing, and then we sort of fill it in. So for instance, Mr. Mom, I can totally see. And it's very strange now that I'm kind of churning it all in my brain, but even like sketches that I've worked on, with you for the code shows or things like that.
Right.
Like there are bits and pieces that like do puzzle piece together very interesting. It makes total sense. I have my film in this sort of in this slot in my brain is John Carpenter's Escape from New York. It's it's a slow monotonous action movie starring Kurt Russell.
Right.
But it shaped so much of like almost like the visual pacing. Like I take pieces from it that I know I like and it works really well, and then I'm like, there's really long scenes that shouldn't be going as long as they are. But like it's so funny when you say things like that when people are like favorite films and you say something like Mr. Mom, Escape from New York. I don't know if she has a shady one.
There's a film from I think we talked about it, Zits.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
Film
Zits,
from the
yes.
80s that kind of
I do
mental.
not know that movie.
It's a hard movie to find. You can only play it on YouTube now, and it's very strange.
Zits, like pimples?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
But I'm curious to go back to this question of like how you think because I think movies that we loved when we were younger kind of like filter into our DNA somewhat, and so it's like it's not even an active thing. It's not like we're trying to do the supermarket scene from Mr. Mom in a comedy sketch. It's more like your sensibility and the things you kind of like gravitate towards become informed by the things that you love when you were younger. So I'm curious for you, like in your professional life, like when do you kind of feel like, oh, that's that tuna moment, or that's the vacuum cleaner Jaws joke, or that's the
drug blanket analogy.
Yeah, like you're gonna give up.
I think it's funny because. Well, I mean, also that movie, I feel like just dealt with interesting gender way before its time.
Of course.
The gender roles thing. It was like the early 80s. Like, when did Kramer versus Kramer come out? Like, it was like that whole era of like sudden. It was like, it was really ahead of its time with gender stuff. And I feel like that is super interesting that I probably subconsciously keep going back to watch that movie because of that. But also there's the two, I mean, like Martin Mull and the old 220, 221, whatever it takes exchange. That is, and there's also the other moment that always sticks out in my head. There's two moments that I feel like I'm constantly trying to achieve the same kind of joke. And one is, it's so subtle. It's when Ron picks up Caroline. Am I allowed to talk about the movie?
Yeah. It's 83.
Yeah,
we can break structure a little bit. Yeah. So guys, we're going to spoil the plot of Mr. Mom.
Yeah.
So stop the podcast. Go watch it.
Matt, before we do it, why don't you tell us what the plot of Mr. Mom is?
The plot.
Yeah, let's fill people. Not everybody has watched this 27 times.
I would love to tell you that this movie is about this. After he's laid off, a husband switches roles with his wife. She returns to the workforce and he becomes a stay-at-home dad. A job he has no clue how to do. Thanks, IMDb one-sentence writers.
Scratching the surface.
It's really just...
I mean, here's a couple of interesting facts about Mr. Mom. Is that Mr. Mom was the number 9 highest grossing movie of that year at 1983. That was a year that included Return of the Jedi. It came in number 9.
Wow.
With a box office total of $64 million.
To this day.
And interestingly, it was written by John Hughes, who also wrote National Lampoon's Vacation.
The same year.
And Mr. Mom made more money than National Lampoon's Vacation. A film that I think we talk about more is National Lampoon's Vacation. Jaws 3D came out that year as well, and Mr. Mom made more money than Jaws 3D.
Wow.
A couple other films that year: Trading Places, Flashdance, Terms of Endearment, War Games, Octopussy. I just like saying that. Superman 3.
Okay, we're only 13 minutes in before Shahir said something like that. All right.
Something crude.
But all those movies are so commonly talked about, and
Mr. Mom is
not. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because I honestly, when you said Mr. Mom, I'd heard the name. I'd never seen it before.
You know what? I don't know why. Because John Hughes was just started. I mean, he was just beginning to blow up.
Yeah, exactly. It was the first or second thing he wrote.
Yeah. The director had done Stan Dracati.
He did. I had it up.
Not Kiss of the Spider Woman, but something else.
Oh no, the vampire film, Love at First Bite. Comedy vampire film.
Yeah.
He did a Tom Hanks film called The Man with the One Red Shoe as well.
Yeah, I think it wasn't. I don't know why it isn't brought up as much because it was more of a dramedy. It wasn't like Animal House or Caddyshack, which is also phenomenal.
But it made a lot of money.
It did well. I think because it was also a family comedy.
Yeah.
I want to say it was a family comedy. I have a theory about why, I like to look at like the contextual issues around a movie, and it's kind of silly, but you always say that comedy is based in reality. Like one of the most popular British comedies is The Full Monty, and it's based on this economic downturn which causes men to go out stripping, which is kind of a similar analogy to Mr. Mom in some way. And
except some men go out and work, and this guy went and stayed home and worked.
Yeah. That's amazing to me. I don't know how any man ever did that, but
What, stripping?
no, both actually. Yeah, I don't know. I need a towel just to get out of the shower. You know, like, like America was in an economic downturn. This whole film is set in the backdrop of the Detroit car industry, and it was kind of interesting to watch this from that, like, as a historical timepiece. And it was like, oh, people lived in Detroit and had houses, and like we're doing well. And then it all, and then Jeffrey Tambor comes in and like ruins everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder if there was like, there was some truth to the film that people were like, oh, like this is actually speaking to the time and place that I'm in right now. It's actually, It actually has some resonance. Like, and for us watching it now, that kind of economic downturn doesn't seem as applicable. And also not only that, like this is 1983. So coming out of the late 70s, the idea, Kramer vs. Kramer was 1979. The idea that a guy would stay at home and look after the kids, I mean, to us, it seems rudimentary, right? Like it seems like fundamental.
But it was super groundbreaking back then.
Yeah, it seems
as a concept.
Yeah, it seems. I guess that's what's weird about it now is like I watch it as a time capsule piece,
right?
Because when I was watching it, like, and we, all the gender stuff we'll get into in a little bit, but like I was like, it's so interesting watching movies that you're absolutely right, Cher. It's like a time capsule, and you're like this. Like, I know they're presenting this as all super weird, but because I never experienced this film when it was super weird, it threw me a little bit. I mean, obviously I can do the mental gymnastics to get around it.
I'm interested in that because seeing it I've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like it's held up. The comedy's held up.
Right.
But for somebody, because you said this is the first time you've seen it, was it still, is it, as a neutral viewer, is it still funny? Is it?
Obsessively, yes.
Okay.
It is still funny. I laughed. There are moments that I thought were very funny. I also really enjoyed, and I didn't realize how much I missed manic Michael Keaton.
Yes.
Like I haven't seen him like that in a long time.
Yeah.
Because Michael Keaton for me is Batman.
Right.
Yeah.
And
which is it's
a very
Michael Keaton.
different Michael Keaton, but
like
he did
Birdman Michael Keaton.
Yeah. So this was, I know I'd seen it before, and even to a lesser degree, of course I have to bring it back to the MCU or the extended MCU, the new Spider-Man movie where he plays the Vulture. It's a villain that I absolutely hate in the comics that I'm super psyched to see him play because he seems like he brings like a gravitas and maybe even a little bit of that manic crazy sort of back into it.
I want him to bring that back.
Yeah, because I would love to see him in a comedy of a similar ilk to this film today. I could love to see him sort of be this sort of like.
You know what he was great in? The Other Guys.
Yeah,
yeah, he was fun.
He has like
he was
a
the boss
small
who works
part,
in the.
But it's old school Michael Keaton.
Okay.
Boss who works in the hardware store, right?
Yeah, and he keep making TLC quotes.
Yeah,
or he keeps saying TLC
but nobody
quotes,
knows it. Yeah,
he doesn't know it's TLC.
That's not TLC. I'm just saying that.
It's like a little snippet of old Michael Keaton.
You can find that whole skit, all his bits from that on YouTube, cut together.
That's super fun.
It's really great. I kind of like Beetlejuice Michael Keaton. Like
Beetlejuice, this feels like proto Beetlejuice to me.
Mm-hmm. Not as
his
manic.
pacing. I'm not talking about like obviously the characters are not the same, but like the way he does this weird like body head shake when he's like excited about a thing, and that's something I always equate to Beetlejuice.
It was like, you fired me too, you son of a bitch.
It's like down note, like really like ramping right back up.
Well, that's one of my favorite moments is when there's a couple, there's two, there's throwaway lines he does that you're like, I don't know if those were improvised at the moment, if they're scripted, but they're brilliant. And one is when Ron is waiting in the limo. He's saying goodnight to Caroline. They're going on the trip. And Ron rolls down the window and says something douchey. And he just says, hey, Madison Avenue, lighten up. And like, it's the same as the chainsaw, want a little trim on that mustache, Ron? Like these like throwaway lines. Oh, I'm a regular Phil Donahue. I'm a regular Phil Donahue with kids. Phil Collins with kids.
It's all been a pack of lies.
Exactly. But it just... his throwaway, quick-paced lines are like some of the funniest parts that you don't notice till you watch it a couple of times, and I think that's like that comedy sweet spot that you're always trying to achieve.
And I think as well, it's like to that point, you got to remember. I think he was a Saturday Night Live guy as well for a little while, wasn't he? Or he kind of
was he?
Yeah, I thought Keaton had like a background in Saturday Night
think
Live.
so.
Or maybe he was on it a couple of times. I don't know.
We're talking
I
in a
think-
high register, so we're not
Yeah,
sure.
we're Ron Burgundying it.
I know when he was on Night Shift, that was the first movie he did, and apparently the studio saw the dailies and was basically like, he's not going to keep doing this, is he? This
Right.
is not going to work.
Oh, wow.
And Ron Howard had to fight them, like, no, because he was so manic and
Right.
so crazy. And they were like, Ron Howard was like, no, calm down, it's going to work out. And they were like, no, he can't do it. And Ron Howard just fought for it, and then that became his signature thing. I mean, he has kind of been slowing down his whole
Of course,
career.
I mean-
he started at 10 and he's getting to now he's at like a 6.
Yeah.
But
And Batman, he knocked it down for Bruce Wayne to like a 2.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I don't know if he was an SNL guy before.
No,
but-
you're right. He's not. He
Okay.
wasn't an SNL, but he did some sort of sketch comedy and stuff back
Okay.
then as well. The thing is, he's so endearingly likable.
Yes.
it's hard not to, even when he's being manic and kind of being weird and like the. For example, the sort of counterpoint film to this that I think was more of my age was Kindergarten Cop.
Right.
You know, like that was kind of more the
Put the cookie down.
Yeah. But you couldn't. The thing is there's as soon as Michael Keaton walks in with the chainsaw and the goggles, you totally you get the vulnerability of that. Whereas
Yeah.
if Arnold Schwarzenegger did that, Arnold Schwarzenegger is very good at physical comedy,
Right.
But if Arnold Schwarzenegger came in and did that scene,
He would come off as threatening as
not
opposed
buy
to
it.
a joker.
Yeah.
exactly. There's not that sort of
Interesting.
endearing quality to him.
Yeah.
So I really did like watching Michael Keaton kind of do his thing, and Terri Garr,
So great.
So, well, oddly, I couldn't quite read her. It was really strange because I remember her from like, I think she was in 90210 or something like that, or a couple of
This
other-
was an Aaron Spelling film.
Yeah.
It was.
She
What
was in,
else has
I've
Terri
seen,
Garr
I've seen her in some
done?
TV stuff. I can't remember, but I couldn't quite get a read on her in this film. Like it was really
Right.
strange for me. I couldn't like figure out what her feeling was. It wasn't like she was kind of like traveling on an arc. I just felt like she was a character.
She
who
was in Tootsie,
Yeah, she was in Tootsie.
Oh, yeah.
Dumb and Dumber.
Dumb and Dumber,
Tootsie,
Young
also
Frankenstein.
great movie.
Yeah,
Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
yeah.
Yeah,
been
she's,
all
right.
she's been around for a while.
Yeah.
This is the thing that was interesting to me because I think the sort of sexual politics of it are really interesting and
Yeah.
I agree ahead of its time. But I also think it's kind of like also bemusingly dated in its approach to sexual politics. It was like, like when Terri Garr, like the outfits when she goes to
Oh, yeah.
work, the outfits are
Man.
ridiculous.
A lot
And
of pussy bows.
Lot of pussy bows.
Yeah.
and the kind of cattiness between her and the other worker.
My favorite thing is that all women who work in advertising have short hair and British accents.
I couldn't figure out
Yes.
the British accent. I
They
was
said
like,
it
what is
like
this?
that's what I think power women equated to. But
Yeah.
it was like you have to be foreign and have a short haircut to
Yeah.
work to be like established in advertising, which is hilarious
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
That was what they just considered powerful. Short hair.
I loved the advertising scene as well. It was like all smoking cigarettes.
so
It was like
great.
Mad Men before when Mad Men looked dirty,
Yeah.
Right,
and
yeah.
gross, and like
This is like 20 years after Mad Men
Yeah.
when women are allowed in the actual
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
meetings.
Just the noise. The second I saw it in my head, I just heard like that dude shitty boardroom laughter.
Yeah.
what's weird is this company has a private jet though. I was like, what is this?
But a very small smoky conference room.
Yeah, Detroit is like falling apart around them, and they're taking a private jet and eating steak.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like,
Well, Ron was really trying to bust it out because he was trying to put the moves on her.
Yeah.
right. So he pulled out the
I think we solved the Detroit auto crisis.
Yeah, I
There
think we
was
figured
Ron-
out what happened. Ron was chartering jets.
I mean, did you see that dude's backyard with like the gaming
Oh, yeah.
events?
oh, and they have
He
the,
lived in a
Olymp-
mansion.
the Olympics.
Yeah.
His grandfather built it.
I was like, man, advertising was really like they were selling the hell out of Ford and Mustang, but they weren't really selling Ford and Mustang.
And they also weren't selling tuna, apparently.
Yeah.
apparently so.
Not until the end.
No.
So I kind of I sort of have this interesting response to which is that I actually did like. So little backstory is I grew up in Fiji, and in Fiji we didn't have TV when I was growing up. So what they would do, some entrepreneurial local stores would do, is that if there would be one person who had a TV satellite connection,
Sure.
which was connected to New Zealand, they would tape movies off TV and then rent them to everyone. So then you would that's how I got my
That was
Saturday.
your Blockbuster video.
Yeah, exactly. But it was like little VHS tapes with handwritten notes on them, and they would do like 2 to 3 movies. They would like bundle up 2 to 3 movies in
Because on extended extra play, you can get like 6 hours on those things.
exactly.
I feel like, to be honest, the video store in Rhinebeck, New York was not that
probably doing
different.
the same thing.
It's very similar.
Yeah. And so then you would kind of get tapes that were kind of themed. You know, so like you would get family comedies or something like that. And you could like, you know, like the family would sit around and watch. And because there was no TV, it was kind of an event to sit around and watch a VHS tape because you wouldn't watch the 6 o'clock news and you wouldn't watch TV any other time of the day. So in the evening, and you'd have this one tape. And, you know, so I had Mr. Mom in that kind of, like, it was one of many films that were kind of like that. And it wasn't one that got high rotation at my house.
Do you remember what the other movies it was grouped with were?
I can't. I know. You know, the movie that got a lot of rotation when I was growing up in Fiji was Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense.
That, for me, yeah, probably.
Not for you, just like in other countries, because Michael Jackson was such a force.
He was such a force. Yeah. And like for me personally, like Michael Jackson was everything growing up. So like the fact that he turns into a robot or a car in that movie was just mind blowing.
And that's not one of your formative films. That's so strange.
I feel like Working Girl, but Working Girl was years later. And like this would have been this. So what would have happened was this would have been one of the older movies on the tape. It was Working Girl. I'm pretty sure Broadcast News was one of them. You know, like kind of family comedies. But Broadcast News is pretty dark and pretty heavy.
But family comedies could be dark and heavy back then, which is kind of
right. They
but
were.
The thing is, there's no curation process in this. It's not like, you know, like we're just taking whatever feed is available, taping it, and then putting and slamming it together. It's not like someone knew what Mr. Mom was versus what, you know, Broadcast News was.
Yeah.
And so watching it now, the thing that I'm kind of, you know, like interested, I'm deeply interested in the John Hughes connection because I love John Hughes. I think The Breakfast Club is a masterpiece. I think Ferris Bueller's Day Off is just a masterpiece. I'm not a big fan of 16 Candles, but it's pretty good. It's just my sister loved that movie.
I loved it. Yeah.
And so
and you hate your sister.
And therefore I was like not into it.
Yeah.
But so I'm really interested in the John Hughes thing. But when I watched it this time around, I was kind of like, this, you know, this is like making movies back in the day must have been such a charming exercise because it was like, as opposed to like a real serious arc to this movie, what I kind of felt like happened was that they kind of like took scenes. It was like, oh man, wouldn't it be, if you're a guy who has never been to the shopping mall, you know, to the supermarket before, wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
And then the next one was like, if you're a guy and you've never like, you know, cleaned the house before, wouldn't that be funny? Or you've never used a vacuum cleaner, wouldn't that be funny?
And like soap operas were huge. So it's like, let's just do an entire soap opera parody.
Can I tell you straight up? So growing up in Amherst, New Hampshire, I would come home from school and my mother would be watching soap operas. And so I would sit down and watch soap operas. So I have this whole General Hospital background.
Yes.
Like, I know Port Charles like the back of my hand.
I know so much about General Hospital.
So like when there was something extra endearing to me when he started getting hooked on soap operas because I was like, yeah.
But I guess my I completely agree as well. But to my point is, as a structural exercise,
you're looking at it in
it's
chunks.
so fun. It seems like there was less at stake, and it was so fun.
Yeah, and every scene just comes up as like the transition into like him having a beard and having a slight paunch is kind of like you know, one scene he kind of loses the race, and the next scene he's got a paunch and he's got a beard. You know, like there's no like sense of like, oh, this is getting worse. It's just kind of like, oh, it's almost like vignettes, you know, like little vignettes of a film. And I was like, it's endearing, but it was, for me, it kind of felt more like scene. I really felt this was like scene work, you know, like he comes into the scene, they have a little exchange, a joke happens,
the
and
vacuum destroys everything.
Right. Yeah. And because they had the cast was such a, like, those guys are all so great at improv and comedy.
Christopher Lloyd is in this for like 3 seconds.
And Martin Mull and Jeffrey Tambor and you know, so much of it was like, what's the funniest thing we can do in this scene?
The whole, apparently the 221 thing was kind of improv.
Oh, you could, that does not surprise me at all.
The 220, 221. And then there's a callback for 357, 358, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
The one thing I thought rewatching it was, at the end, big spoiler, at the end, he gets his job back and she decides she misses her kids and wants to go home. And part of me was saying, oh, well, did it not really go anywhere? But it did, because it's really a relationship comedy.
Right.
The kids are there and they're funny, but it's not about, it's relationship
not about the
comedy.
Kids.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
There's something. Sorry.
No, I was just, and so there was like a resolution where they both grew and their relationship was stronger and they realized what they want to do and how they want to do it, and they're supportive of each other. So it was There was growth. There was an arc.
But this is
So
the thing
I
about
know-
Terri Garr, where I was like, I couldn't make a read on her. Is I couldn't get a read whether she liked her job or whether she wanted to like move up that because
by the end,
because it's
yeah.
very 80s in that she like gets promoted immediately. You know, like
Right.
as soon as you show some initiative,
Right.
But you know what kind of undercuts it, and I know it's a part of the comedy and whatever. Like, so there's extra, I call them love interests or people that are pining for both main characters.
Right.
Obviously, Ron, the shitty boss, who's like hitting on her,
who's
and
pretty much a rapist. I gotta admit that.
but I mean, this isn't a defense of it, but like all '80s villains were pretty much rapists.
Yes, that's
like it's
true.
a very strange
Yeah.
thing. And then you have I can't remember Joan, the neighbor who just wants to do both in
He's
dream
like an
and not in
off-brand
dream.
Ann Jillian.
Yeah. So like hitting on Michael Keaton. So
And but like hitting on like in that way that movies set up people like as attractive is like, oh, he's single,
Right.
You know, or no, he's just
like
a dad at home.
blood in the water and sharks will come.
There's
Like
that scene in the grocery store where the other friend whose name I don't remember, who's like, he's married.
Yeah,
she
yeah.
says, so were we once. But you don't hate, for some reason, it's because it's an 80s movie. You're like, I don't hate her for being a homewrecker.
yeah, exactly.
I'm
it's
almost rooting for her at moments.
It's weird though how close it's weird how close she Michael Keaton goes to the line with
Yeah.
her, and then but it's like oddly endearing. You know, like at one point he's like staring down her top. You know, she's like, "What have I got here?" And he's like, 2 pair. And,
Yeah.
and like
yeah,
Terri,
the coupon poker scene.
Yeah, coupon poker was hilarious.
and Terri Garr is standing behind them watching it, and it's like, wait, this is like clearly as a married couple, you've probably crossed a line here.
Yeah.
And then the next scene, like she's in bed, you know, when Terri Garr comes home.
And he's in the
Right.
bathroom going through the entire alphabet of why he should or should not do it.
But then she just like shoos her away. It's
And
almost
at no point do you really judge him for that, which is that is the art maybe of 80s filmmaking that
Yeah.
we've just, it's
That
like,
might be the
why
time
does everybody
capsule.
get away with everything that there's no judgment. I wasn't ever like, oh, he's a terrible
What a
husband.
fucking scumbag.
Yeah.
So an interesting thing is I read I did some Mr. Mom reading and
Oh, really?
John Hughes was offered to direct this, like so. The producer Laura Donner kind of had met John Hughes, and they for some reason John Hughes had just had his baby, and he was kind of telling her stories about how he didn't know how to go to the supermarket, he didn't know how to use the vacuum cleaner, and she just fell over and started laughing. She thought this was hilarious, and he was like, "Look, I've got 80 pages on this if you want to check it out." So obviously he was probably pitching her, you know, like
Right,
unintentionally,
yeah.
and then. They offered it to him to direct it, but he, you know, John Hughes has this thing, which is he didn't want to make any movies outside of Chicago. He liked working in Chicago. He liked working with actors in Chicago, which is why, and he loved like being on location. He didn't want to be in LA, and so Donner produced it and decided to bring in Aaron Spelling as the sort of EP, and Aaron Spelling was obviously a TV guy. There was this kind of feeling that this movie should have been a TV movie. In fact, it was remade as a TV movie
Yeah,
a little bit
1
later.
year later.
1 year later, as a
1984, yeah.
as a TV movie.
with a whole new cast.
Whole new cast, nowhere near as funny, didn't make as much money. But the interesting thing was that I think Hughes talked about it a lot, where he said, you know, like they basically sketchified what he'd written as a film, because we know John Hughes can write a movie.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
He can put together a whole story that means something. So he kind of talks about it as well. It's very successful, but it's kind of taking his original script, which had, I think, more of an arc to it, and kind of just making it individual sketches.
Wow.
Right.
To play it out.
But see, I think I've had this conversation on a broader, which is a bigger conversation about why some comedies with heart work as comedies with heart and some dramedies work and others don't, because it is a balance of getting people to laugh while still being invested in a story.
Yeah.
And oftentimes movies just lean too far on one side or the other.
Yeah.
And I think that is a constant challenge in making scripted comedies, is balancing that investment in the characters and investment in the story with the laughs. And some movies go just straight laugh.
Yeah, I mean, like-
and I feel like I do think this did a good job of balancing it, because I was invested in it, but I was laughing through the whole thing.
Here's why it does a great job, and it's funny because it needs more, like it would take more than one viewing of this for me to actually get the reasoning why. But like it rides that knife's edge of comedy and caring so carefully, and it does it. It must do it incredibly well, because while watching it, I never thought about it.
Exactly.
And so, like, there's these things that happen to all the characters. Things we talked about, the near cheating on Jack's part, the whole thing about that, and him messing up a bunch, or her I'm trying to remember what was the wife's name? Carolyn. Yeah, when Carolyn was there was that scene where she near like 2/3 through, where she's like, no, I need to do my job, and she like leaves, and like there was like that was a little bit of
she doesn't come home one night. And makes her dinner.
Yeah, and like there's a bunch of like that sort of
Plus
stuff.
the downfall of the auto industry.
I mean, there's that in the backdrop, but like there's something about it. Like there's a lot of serious shit that that happens in this movie,
right?
But it never focuses on that serious shit enough or in a certain way to take you away from the fun that the movie is trying to be, and that's hard.
But you also follow the story.
Yeah,
you don't lose like there's a lot of movies I feel like where they either get too off on the tangent of improv comedy and
the kind of Will Ferrell-y kind of modern comedies,
funny people, which is it's
that's
just
kind
all
of
over
dark.
the place.
I haven't seen Baywatch because it's coming out soon, but I hear
I'm
there's
sure that's
bits
going to be
pieces of that in there as well.
Right. I think then there's the others. Like I think Mean Girls is a great movie.
Mean Girls is a fantastic movie.
But it also lost the comedy somewhere through, partway through. I feel like to some degree at the end. I feel like the end of that movie didn't know what it was, and it became a very earnest resolution ending movie that forgot it was a comedy for the last act. But maybe
it probably did, because I'm looking at all the jokes that I know from Mean Girls, like Get In Loser,
and
We're
they're
Going
from
Shopping,
Act 1
and they're all Act 1 and Act 2.
See, to me, that's when comedy is slightly more transcendent, which is that and I think towards the end of Mean Girls, there are still laughs to be had, but it is trying to, it's not what I like about Mean Girls. And, there's a couple comedies like this recently. I love Superbad. I think Superbad does a really good job of this.
I agree.
Where it is.
That's a great balance.
Yeah, it's a perfect balancing act. But it's not afraid to kind of be earnest as well. Like that old adage, good comedy comes from truth.
But I feel like there's a difference between earnest and honest.
Right.
And I think that's where it gets into the forced earnestness.
Right.
Sure.
At the end of a movie versus what feels like raw honesty, where you can find the humor in it still.
Right.
I think that's that really fine line to walk along. And I think I'm sure it is because of studio pressure and what you have to do to wrap up a story, that comedy movies will sometimes venture into the earnest as opposed to the honest and get.
Do you know one of my favorite movies that I watch almost once a year? That it's to me, it's like the case study of a film that never attempts to try and turn its comedy into earnestness.
Ishtar.
I wish it was Ishtar. One of the biggest flops of all time. Yeah. No, what about Bob? Have you seen that with Bill Murray?
Oh, yes. And Richard Dreyfuss.
Dreyfuss. That is
fantastic.
And it's a film that just continues to escalate the absurdity of which Bob is kind of ruining this person's life. And it never at any point allows him to learn a lesson. It never tries to make this relationship between these two men work. I think it's a case study for like a film that to me works and never really tries to ever take that step.
And that is even harder because those movies where only one person knows the other person's crazy and is trying to convince anybody can very quickly get repetitive or dull.
Yeah.
That movie, it's like also Groundhog's Day is another good example.
Oh, God bless Groundhog's Day.
Such a great job of.
But that has a lesson to it.
But it never went too earnest. It always felt in the right tone.
Again, it had the balance. Yeah.
And I What About Bob is a great example.
I love that movie so much.
It's very good. But Overboard, another great example.
Overboard, Goldie Hawn,
Overboard.
Kurt Russell, yeah.
Oh, God bless Kurt Russell.
So, I mean, to me, Mr. Mom kind of doesn't hold up. Maybe it's not but the thing is, it's not a movie that I love, where I'm obsessing about it. I think there's, to me, what's endearing about it is Michael Keaton.
Yes,
I think
fully.
That's the thing. And the other thing that this movie,
Martin Mull is a bad guy.
Yeah.
I feel like Martin Mull did a good job of it's not his funniest work.
Swarmy.
But he did a good job of nailing the swarmy guy. He was the perfect counterpart to Mike. Michael Keaton couldn't have been as funny without Martin Mull.
I agree with that.
It's funny. The grocery checkout operator in the supermarket was the same woman from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She was the principal's assistant.
Oh, wow.
Right.
And she's playing the exact same role. I forget what her name is, but
that's the Kotex. What
clean up on aisle something.
Clean up. No,
Kotex. Yeah, Kotex are on sale.
I think we have a sale on these. Yeah.
She's great.
That's right. I didn't even realize that was good catch.
It's there are moments, and so it's interesting because you're saying like how it doesn't hold up.
I think it's endearing.
Sure,
and
sure.
It's a really interesting time capsule.
It is a time capsule.
That's the thing, because
But it still makes me laugh. Like, there's several movies that I have watched that I thought were hilarious once, and that I watch now and do not make me laugh.
we just did one for me.
What was
Oh,
that?
right. That was like, I feel like you were having an identity
Life
crisis.
The Life
Yeah.
Aquatic.
Yeah.
Life Aquatic.
Aquatic.
Seem to be having some sort of identity crisis.
Yeah, it
and
sucked.
Revisiting
It really sucked. Not saying the movie is what I feel about it, but like it sucked for me
to see how much your
see how
perspective
much
had
my
changed.
perspective had shifted. So this film, Mr. Mom, was weirdly a breath of fresh air even outside of itself, because I knew it was a time capsule going in, and I knew. But to actually, because there's a ton of 80s comedies that don't hold up.
Yes,
and this one I watched and I was like, I dig this. Like, yeah, do I think there's some trite shit like the tampon joke and the clean or whatever thing, or like, you know, whatever
the Jaws theme or the Chariots of Fire, you know, like,
Sure,
I was like, they're really parodying, like,
yeah, like
they
that,
used the music from Patton for the end.
yeah.
So, is there trite stuff in it? Sure. But there is something weirdly endearing about A, Michael Keaton, and B, the situationalness of it all. Like, and I also, obviously, because it's an 80s movie in a certain ilk, I knew exactly what was going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
And I also didn't care that I knew exactly what was going to happen. There's something interesting to me about how, like, I keep bringing up the vacuum, but the vacuum's like this evil sort of entity. They call it the shredder or something. I don't remember what they call it.
Jaws.
And then Jaws. Yeah. And then, but eventually he's literally commanding it like it's a remote controlled robot.
Right. He's like, go clean up the kids'
And it
room.
just goes, meh, and it like turns, and you're like, whoa.
And fighting the washing machine like Rocky. And I mean, the moments that one of the other things I love about that is the relationship with the kid with the whoopee and his conversation about growing up.
The whoopee being a blanket.
Yeah, and the having to get rid of the whoopee, and those kids were also amazing.
Yeah, they were really fun.
Yeah.
And then I love little things, like things that really got me, again, were side sort of things like you said before, where it's like, you fed a baby chili, and then he's in the bathroom and it's just horrifying. How many times have you fed your son chili?
We have not fed him chili yet.
Oh, you got to do that.
I'm not sure what the food is that makes him, like poop like a maniac.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find
this will
out.
take years of experimenting to find out.
Oh God.
I know now it's not chili. Chili is not something we should get.
How old is your kid?
18 months.
Does he have any sort of binky whoopee past anything yet?
He's starting to get attached to his, like, I love this though, by the way. He's starting to get attached to his like soft toys that are in bed with him. And he's got a monkey and a titty, but he's got a fox and he can't say X. So it's fuck. so I just love putting them in a row and go and like monkey, fuck, titty. Like that's like my when I'm home alone with him, that's like how I endlessly
when you're Mr. Mom.
When I'm Mr. Mom.
Yeah.
Like,
on a completely separate note, but similar, my nephew was obsessed with Thomas the Trains, which I'm sure your son will be eventually.
Yeah.
But Thomas's best friend is Percy, which every child has a trouble saying. Has trouble with ours, and somebody did that on purpose.
Oh, 100%.
Because it's always Pussy needs to go to get cleaned. Pussy's dirty, and it's somebody intentionally was like, "What can we name this trait?"
That's amazing.
Sweet British humor.
So we knew sort of the things that were coming for most, or I knew even though I hadn't seen it. Something you brought up briefly, Laura, that I was hoping it took a turn and it didn't. There was a moment near the end where the bad boss comes back and offers Jack his job, and then
Jeffrey Tambor.
Yes.
It's like this big sort of culmination in the house of everything coming together.
All the repair people are there.
For some reason, who
I love the repair people. I love the repair people.
All on one day.
It all turned out. It was like the time when you had to get a TV repair person instead of Google.
I get that. I feel like sometimes I'd rather have everybody come do everything in one day.
And everyone knew him. Anyway, there was a moment where Jeffrey Tambor says, they're making like back and forth, like the contingencies, like, I need my friends back, and he's like, fine, done.
Yeah.
And he's like, do you want to come back?
I'll give you a company car.
5 days a week, 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 2 days a week. And I was like, when he labeled that, I was like, oh shit. they're going to do something super progressive,
where-
and they're going to
Co-parenting,
co-parent.
That's what I
Yes.
thought.
I thought 100% that was going to
Yeah.
happen. And then it was like, nope, he just goes back to
Yeah.
work and she goes home.
Test audiences were like, we don't believe this is possible.
That would have been.
We have to change this.
Oh, that would
I
have
know,
been,
that would have been so good.
So that was my one point in this
That would have
movie.
been extremely cutting edge.
But that's my I guess current day sensibilities being
that-
disappointed in
that-
something that was still
Yes.
very progressive. Just
Yes.
I was like, you're not progressive enough, 1983.
But that's an interesting thing, which is that I couldn't get a read on Terri Garr, and it's weird to me as well as like how domesticated she is, like to the point where she's cutting her boss's steak when like without even realizing.
Yeah.
And then she gets into the boardroom and she starts cleaning up, and they're like, we have cleaners for that.
Right.
And there's this like sense of
Oh, you
but
don't get out much.
The
Right.
one that really got me though, I don't know why this was like jarring for me, is when Michael Keaton gets fired and she dresses the kids up and kind of presents them to him as the and I was
right.
and I don't know why, because it was like, to me this got the sense that
that's like the rules book from the 50s of
Yeah.
how to make your husband
how to
happy.
make your husband happy. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I can't quite get a handle on
But I think that was probably I mean, I think that works to set the tone of what the tone is at the beginning of the movie and where it ends up. It's very much the old school thinking about the man comes home, make sure he's comfortable, make him dinner, and where it ends up, where he's
But she's it actually even begins right at the beginning, which is that she
She's
gets
getting up first.
She gets up first. She turns on the shower
Right.
for him.
She gives him food.
She gives him food.
And he can't remember to take off his pants before getting in the shower.
right.
Yeah, exactly. And it was-
Classic.
Oh, I can't count the times I've done that.
But then there's isn't there the exact same scene later on where he gives
Gives
her
her-
food in the shower?
Yeah, he gives her a piece of toast
In case
in the
you didn't
shower.
understand that there's been a shift.
There's been a shift.
how-
There has been a shift of role. There's been a role reversal.
There has been a role
and a
reversal.
bagel is the best way to show it. A bagel in the shower.
I agree.
But it was just, it's
Man,
such
that
a
sounds
level
great.
of domesticity, like where that just doesn't exist now. Like you would never. I can't imagine, like ever going home and having my child presented to me with
Right.
dinner on the table,
Sure,
kind
sure,
of thing.
sure,
nice clothes.
And nice clothes and everything.
I
You know
have
what I mean?
friends, so it's interesting. So I have friends that are, or a friend that is a full stay-at-home dad.
Has he seen Mr. Mom?
I don't know. I'm going to have to find out.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's funny because while watching this, I was just like, it's like I couldn't help but be like, oh, this is how he's going to be like this, whatever. But like we just went away to a wedding this last weekend, and his daughter, who's like I think 3 months or something
Right,
like that. We took a road trip with her basically, so it was just me and him and this 3-month-old in a car to Connecticut because he was
It's like 3 men and a little lady minus one.
right,
baby.
right. One guy didn't make it.
Yeah.
But like I was just picturing like how we were with this is the best part too, and I know I'm sort of going off a tangent. So it was to a wedding. He was going to drop the baby off with his mother, so then we could all go to the wedding. But we hung out in the groomsman's suite. So it was 8.
With the baby or
with the baby. So
Okay.
it's like 10 dudes getting ready for a wedding and a 3-month-old baby girl.
Yeah.
And
Just
like
watching.
But like we had her in a little bouncy chair and whatever. And it was so funny because we were like being super crass and just being monsters. And then like whenever we passed the baby, we'd be like, oh, your sock fell off. And like we'd like play with the baby for a second.
Right.
So like the point of this story is, I think when I watched it, so there's obviously, yes, it's dated, and there's obviously it's role reversal and sort of I was able to see how, on a personal level, like how easy it is to just sort of like, especially, and maybe it's just today. In fact, I'm sure it is just today, but like that's a super easy, cool transition if you want to do it that way. Like,
Right.
like he wants to do that. They're in a position, his wife and him are in a position where that sort of works. And that's fucking great. Like he's super psyched. And like, if I look at their roles, like even just knowing them, I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Like
that is very new.
I know 100%.
And this was 1983.
Yeah.
And if you think about the time between that and I mean very new, like in the past couple of years, people are far more accepting about
Within, like, the last
stay-at-home
3 or
dads
4,
without
yeah.
judgment. And that's a long time in between. And the thing that movie did although it was about his struggle, it also showed how hard it is to be
Yes.
a mom, which
Yeah.
it did in a very subtle, not heavy-handed way, which is the best way to let everybody know how hard it is to be a mom, is
Yeah.
to see it from the guy's perspective.
And see him freaking out.
It did a great job of saying, this isn't an easy job. I think that's also something that only recently are people coming around. Like,
Realizing that it's a
and
full-time
this is
gig. Yeah.
2017. That was 1983, and it's still just a new thing for
Just
stay-at-home dads.
Yeah. And let me
That's
ask you this.
very long.
Do we think that it's, I mean, I know it's new, but like, also, do we think we're living in our New York, LA bubble at
Yes,
this point?
I
Like, do you
think a
think middle
little bit.
America would look at this and be like, or look at that situation right now and be like, yeah, that's fine.
Yes, a little bit. I think being cool with the stay-at-home dad and the mom working is probably pretty progressive and on the coasts more than it is anywhere
Sure.
else. So
Yeah.
it might be bubbly a little.
Yeah, I don't know. I always try to. I'm trying to think about the bubble these days.
Yeah.
It's I mean, like having just come into that role a little bit, it's interesting to think about because I guess for us now, without a doubt, my wife does more work as a parent than I do, like way more. She is much more needed by our child. She's much more capable of looking after our child than I am, like way more. And she is.
I don't know your home life entirely, but I would 100% agree.
Oh yeah, completely. She is way better at not killing him than I am.
Yep.
You know, like
Right.
she's just really good at
We've
that.
taken him to the park before. We look like the same sex couple when
Yeah,
we go
yeah.
to the park.
Adorable.
But I think, like there's an interesting, I guess maybe it is a little bit of the bubble, but the thing that I found really difficult to parse from the film itself was that in my experience, when you become a parent, your whole life kind of suddenly shifts and you're like, oh shit, there's this thing I got to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And it's such a shock to the system that you either adapt or die. I watched Mr. Mom thinking that he's never looked after the kids a day in his life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it kind of,
Well, the beginning scene, he comes down, he does the joke of the day, he like does his quick thing, he's like, gotta go, and then
Yeah.
like he's gone. Like you can just tell it's like he sees him in the morning and he
Yeah.
sees him maybe at night.
Yeah.
He bolts and then he goes. And I was like, I guess, and I'm not saying that isn't true. Like that isn't true of like 1983, and isn't even true. You know, it's probably still true of working parents today. But that was the thing that I found like. It in some ways it kind of, although I know John Hughes wrote it from experience, it kind of felt like someone writing about parenting who'd never been one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Although
a
I
little
think in
bit.
that era, it probably was
It
a
may have
lot of
been.
parents or dads who worked full time and didn't know their literally didn't know their children or the
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
about it. And he's just the dad that comes in and hangs out with them before they go to bed. And then
Sure.
on weekends,
Yeah.
I think that probably was more normal then. It is very different. I think that part is different now.
Yeah.
That even working dads with stay-at-home moms are more involved in the kid's life
Yeah.
when they're not at the office.
Or at least I hope so.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
you
definitely
would
know
like
because,
to hope.
like, when I'm working, it is a little bit like that because I don't see him at, like he goes to bed early, so I don't see him at night, and I just see him in the morning, and I'm really tired. So it is a little bit like that
Sure.
sometimes. But I kind of got the impression that he'd never hung out with his kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also interesting in whatever role, I think, and today it's obviously different. It's accepted, at least in the bubbly situation, that either parent can do it. But like, I just look back at my own childhood and I was like, oh, so my mom stayed at home and my dad worked.
Yeah.
So when I was younger, my dad was just this dude that showed up in the mornings and the nighttime because he literally
Right.
worked whatever. But then when I got to be like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever the age, like for instance, like Cub Scouts started and stuff like that. Then he took a more sort of active role. He
Right.
became like a scoutmaster, and like I think it's interesting because
There's more for him to do.
I
Yeah.
guess because like otherwise it's just like the care is being taken care of while the other person is going out
Yeah.
and making money. But now when I eventually turned into what I would consider almost a human, then he could have interactions with me on a meaningful level outside of making sure I don't die.
Right.
So I think there's something interesting with whatever parent works.
Yeah.
They're going to get to know their kid later in life than the one that stays home.
I have the opposite situation
Okay.
because my mom worked full time and my dad was a teacher. So he worked full time, but he was home
In the summer.
when we were home
Right,
after
3 o'clock.
school
Yeah.
and in summers. So as a kid, I wasn't a latchkey kid, but I came home to a babysitter. Both my parents worked. My dad just got home earlier. My dad made dinner all
Yeah.
weeknights. My dad did, and then on weekends, course, my mom would do the bigger meals and holidays, but I knew my mom more later.
Yeah.
Because she was the bigger breadwinner. She did the bills. She ran, she was it was a kind of reverse situation. But my dad was also my softball coach, and he was super involved in our lives and was around more.
Yeah.
Which, I guess maybe that's formed that's why I am like I am, maybe.
Right.
No, I mean we're all products of how we were raised.
That's why I spent a long time dating people who didn't know how to do bills. But I've
Didn't know how to do bills?
Yeah, just a lot of defaulting on payments.
Oh, right.
We were having some relationship discussions before you got here, Shay.
Yeah.
All right, I get it.
There's a lot of Con Ed bills not paid in my past relationships. But now I've moved on to a bill payer.
You are dating a bill payer. And congratulations.
Thank you.
That must be
It's a
amazing.
huge step for me.
Yeah.
Isn't
it just an auto pay thing? Like if they just turn the auto pay on?
You would think that would be...
that would solve so many problems.
Very logical.
Yeah.
But you put someone in a situation like Mr. Mom
Here's the
that
thing.
has not had to do it before.
Foreign to them.
And then they just don't know.
Here's the thing. I was really curious about what Joan wants. Like, I was like, what is she
Joan wants to
ask?
fuck.
Yeah.
No, but is it just because like breaking up that relationship means that now she
doesn't
becomes
get a friend.
Yeah.
She kills a friend. She have to be with. No, but no.
does she get the kids?
That might be the most dated portrayal of a single woman in
like
her
a fucking
housewives kind of-
fucking predator.
Yeah.
just full like cougar before cougar was a thing.
Yeah.
Even though she was probably supposed to be 34. I don't know how old she's
And
supposed to
also,
be.
there was something uneven about her because it was funny because like there were hints and hints and hints like down the shirt and like poker and like helping out and whatever. She never did anything like too awful. Then there's a dream sequence where she comes over in like lingerie.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then they have a whole
I love that dream.
a whole thing. Well, yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, that's the natural progression of what this was going to, whatever. And then it goes not in a dream sequence of her coming over to just fuck him in
the
their
bed. Yeah, in their bed.
and she like literally hears that he's like having I forget why, but she like gets in her car and like goes there.
Yeah.
In her like
She's
cool
like a
single girl
she's
car.
the siren, right? She's just there. Her character was
Joan gets
just
down.
there to tempt him.
Joan gets
But
down.
what I like about it is they didn't make her into like a cliche, ditzy, hot.
No, she was
secretary.
very smart.
She was smart and conniving and kind of a bad guy to some degree.
Oh, sure.
And
she was the less rapey bad guy.
But then good with the kids. But then
but this is
cheered
what-
him up at the strip show.
This is what I mean. Is
I
like,
forgot they took him to the male strip
You know what
club.
it is? That is a complex female character for a movie in the 80s. Like that, I guess that era did have a lot of complex female characters, but that was a very non-cliche.
She was not one note.
Multifaceted.
Yeah.
Huh. What did she want? Like
She
what
wanted
was
to
the
fuck
end game?
She
Michael
wanted to
Keaton.
fuck him.
It was just down to
and
fuck.
I
That's
get it. I want to fuck Michael Keaton.
See, there you go.
We all do, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like
Apparently I have since I was 12.
I mean, you know,
But what like is she gonna?
she's gonna fuck Michael Keaton.
For the
That's
record,
it.
I was not 12 in 1983.
Good catch.
Good catch. I was one.
There you go. I was 4.
I don't
Okay.
think I saw this movie. I didn't find it till the 90s at
Gotcha.
some time.
Yeah,
No, she just wants to have sex,
that's it.
and sometimes that's
Yeah.
all you want. Shahir.
Right. Okay.
And I don't think she cares about the consequences.
No, she doesn't give a shit.
care about
Yeah.
the kids.
She'll think about it after the fact.
I feel like Terri Garr doesn't care that much either. To be honest, She was
well,
like-
here's the thing:
she was like, "Get outta
If
here."
Michael Keaton was good, she would then have to deal with the consequences. If he was bad, she would have gotten out of her system, and then that would have been it.
But I don't think Terry Garr would have ever fucked Martin Mull, ever.
No,
because he
Martin
was
Mull's gross.
Yeah, even if Michael Keaton fully fucked up and the marriage was going down the
she'd go to that strip club that all of her friends went to.
Yeah,
because
she
Martin
would
Mull-
have been single for a while and then figured it out
Then
later.
she would have found a Mr. Mom
Yeah.
to go hit on,
Maybe she would have ended up with Christopher Lloyd.
and that would have been great.
Yeah.
That would have been great.
I mean, because Martin Mull was also like, it was never a point where she was like attracted to his money.
No,
Like
yeah.
she was never like, oh my God, life would be so great if I lived here. You know, like it was there was never a sense of that.
I mean, you do have to give John Hughes credit for these very three-dimensional, multifaceted female characters that he created from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because they could have easily fallen into
Like
stereotypes.
you look at
and
like National Lampoons, right?
Yeah.
And you look at that sort of thing, and I forget what's her name?
Beverly D'Angelo.
Beverly D'Angelo.
Yeah.
Good,
So good.
Good catch.
Cheekbones like you'd never believe.
Oh my god! But she with either Wayne Newton or like whoever she's sort of with, like that's the Vegas one. But like
Right.
she's always like tempted by like the money and like the whatever. Like nothing ever happens. Just like Clark is tempted by the woman in the car and the pool and like all that
Right.
shit. But like it's all very like both of them are very like flat. Like like this is the stereotypical thing that a man wants or a woman wants. And this movie doesn't do that. All of the tempting things are multifaceted to a point, with the exception of Ron.
Yes.
He's just a fucking rapist.
Well, no, it's just that weird
Attempted rapist.
Yeah, it's that weird last moment which happens like it's the in Back to the Future when
He
Biff's
breaks
like,
into her fucking hotel room.
Right, with champagne.
He brings
While-
champagne and food so it's not rape.
While
And
she's
then-
in the bathtub.
while she's in the bathroom, which is like completely like this. Donald Trump got sued for this, by the way, like
Right.
doing the exact same shtick.
It's called The Trump. That movie's
Oh,
called
what,
The
is that
Trump.
what the movie's called?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
called
the,
The
Oh,
Trump.
man.
the Trump.
Okay.
The champagne, food, break into a hotel room while
great.
somebody's
And
in
then,
a bubble bath.
And then she like she's like, please leave, and he's like,
And he
no.
doesn't.
And then like
And he's wearing a silk robe.
he's wearing a so. I'm pretty sure Donald Trump got literally sued for this exact
That's
movie.
so funny.
Like there was
is
some
funny.
executive
Donald
at the-
Trump is the villain in Mr. Mom.
Or Donald Trump watched Mr. Mom and was like, ooh.
It was like, ooh,
That's
it's a
for
great
me.
idea,
he
fantastic
is-
I'm
idea.
going to use that move. Fantastic move.
Because all she does is like it's not like she sues him for like libel or anything like that, or sues
No.
him for attempted rape. Like she pushes him away, and he's like, "Oh, playing hard to get, are we?"
Yeah.
you know, like it's like. But then she comes back. He comes back to offer another, like the job, and he's like, it's like nothing
Right.
happened.
They kind of move
But he
past
gets
it.
punched out. A lot of people get punched in this movie, which I appreciate.
Yes.
Yeah, well, don't talk to my kid like that.
Yeah,
or I'm
that's
gonna
right. One
punch
more
you.
time.
Yeah.
All right, so we've been talking about Mr. Mom for about an hour. I
Yeah.
wanted to go around and do final thoughts. We'll do Shahir and me, then Laura can take us home.
Yeah, I mean, look, I enjoyed this as a time capsule piece. I enjoyed watching it. Like I was when you mentioned it, I was like, oh my god, I remember watching this movie, and I was like, I love Michael Keaton, and now I'm a dad. Maybe this will be like like this will resonate with me in a way that I didn't think was possible. And I kind of watched it, and I was like, oh, it's goofy fun. It's endearing to see Michael Keaton kind of like in that mode that he's not in anymore. And I was like, and then I kind of went down the rabbit hole of John Hughes. Like I am really obsessed with John Hughes. I think he's just amazing. And I was kind of like, oh, this is an interesting period, like that first script that he wrote. But I don't love the movie. I like for me personally, I remember the poster more than I like remember the actual movie. Like just that idea of holding the kid and going, oh my god. But it's. So what I actually am really curious to hear is your take on the whole thing and like why you think this stands up.
Well, I'm going to speed through mine
Yeah,
real
yeah,
quick.
yeah.
So basically, I think, look, it's a fun film. I love that we've coined it as a time capsule because I did have it written in my notes. Like, fun film doesn't hold up. And yeah, if you look at it outside of that, it doesn't hold up great. The jokes will make you laugh. There is no question. If you put this on and you have a soul, you will laugh a bunch of times at this movie. Or I should say, an attention span and a soul. Because obviously, 80s comedies are paced different than today's comedies, and I understand that whole jazz. I do think there is something. It's one of those rare comedies that actually offers something of value from back in the day, more than just a look at, more than just sort of laughs and like what people thought were comedies. And that I feel is the progressiveness that it shows, even when it fumbles with the progressiveness, and even when it like you have to again look at like when it was made. People saw this and then realized, oh shit, like dads can stay home. Like what, even if it didn't become the norm or whatever, they saw a prominent male actor that they've seen in other things doing traditionally the mother's role, and made it in an endearing, fun way. So I think that is something that beyond just it being funny and silly and cool for the time and a time capsule of the moment, I think that's something that actually has cultural value. And I appreciate it for that. And I'm glad that even though I had not seen it up until last night, that I watched it. Laura?
I mean, I think there's definitely a part of me that has a nostalgic attachment to it. I'm willing to admit that. But I do think that the thing that holds up for me is Michael Keaton's performance and the jokes and the writing. Mm-hmm. And I think it is a time capsule, but so many of those movies from that era you rewatch and the performance and the jokes just don't hold up.
Yeah.
There is a timelessness to the jokes especially the improvised and the off the cuff jokes, that still makes you laugh out. Like you said, you laughed out loud, and it's the first time you've seen it. And I think that is a lot of movies from the 80s or older movies you watch, and they do not make you laugh anymore because they're so based on references or the time. There's a timelessness to the humor in it that I appreciate. And I think it was pretty ahead of its time for its depiction of advertising, women in the workforce, and gender dynamics that it did a great job on, and of shining a light on them without being heavy-handed about it or realizing that you were looking at that. And I also will say, I don't know if you did this, but I immediately started to Google what the noodles were that he threw in the pan.
Oh, that blew up so big.
Oh, yeah.
If you Google it, if you do Mr. Mom noodles, it's the first thing that comes up.
So what is it? What is it? Because I didn't do that.
They're like very thin rice noodles. If you throw them in searing hot oil, they will do that.
Whoa.
That was the first thing when I rewatched it that I Googled.
I know what I'm doing Memorial Day weekend.
And the first thing that comes up is, what are those crazy noodles?
That's amazing. Thank you, Google, for keeping us relevant.
Wow. Yeah, no, I remember seeing that and I was like, I guess that's the transition where he's learning to cook and he's not really learning to
I
cook.
thought that might have been like a cut. Like I thought they might have done like one of those hard cut, like super shitty, like old school transitions. I didn't know.
I feel like that was the Kramer versus Kramer moment.
Yeah,
of
the French
movie.
toast?
Yeah, it was like that was the biggest thing.
That's
that was
great.
the most weighted French toast in movie history. Kramer versus Kramer.
I guess, the only thing that I was curious about there is that we never really see Michael Keaton being an engineer. Right? He's
No, we see him being kind of a dummy with the workers in the factory, like
But it's
trying to
talking
make an
about
analogy about
Rocky.
Rocky.
Yeah.
But his final speech is like, I'm a guy that just makes cars and I'm really good at it. And I was like, I haven't seen you do anything related.
Yeah,
you don't know
prove it.
221s.
But I also don't. But I also don't.
anything about wiring.
I know, but I also don't care.
Right.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
I'm fine with it. Like
Yeah.
if the story says he's a good engineer, it's sure great.
That's
He needs
another
to come
scene
back.
that had to be half improvised. That Rocky scene was so great.
Yeah, we're just like
Then he walked away. They're like, he never
He's
saw
a
me.
Rocky.
You never saw Rocky. That's the thing. This movie has Rocky, Jaws, and Chariots of Fire.
But you know what's
Was it
interesting?
Patton?
So
where was the Patton scene?
At the the tuna with a heart. The
Yep.
theme song was from Patton.
So here's the deal. Here's the
That-
deal. We were talking about how today's comedies have references that are super reference based, and then that might not be why they hold up. This has references, but they're all references to things that are literal classics. Like
Right.
so, like
Classic
Rocky,
spin, yeah.
Jaws,
That's
Chariots of Fire, like that
true.
whole thing. So like they just feel.
They picked the
They
right
feel
references.
perfect. The references are on point.
That's a good point.
But like today's stuff, you're not like it's just not
Right.
doing that. But then you could argue that's because so much more media is created in a certain.
Well, today's
span of time.
stuff is still referencing Jaws and Chariots of
yeah.
Fire. It's the same four things.
So we're still in the public lexicon.
Yeah.
Anyway, wow. Well, this has been a super fun conversation. This has been the only podcast about Mr. Mom.
I'm going to go on the record and say I think that's true.
Yeah.
Well, you know what?
About time.
That's great. About time. We've only had 1 or 2 episodes where
if you're
where the
Googling-
asterisk doesn't have to go away.
Yeah. If you're Googling like Mr. Mom, you're going to come up with the noodles and then us.
Yes. Oh, I hope we come right under the noodles. Laura, thank you so much for coming on
Thanks for
and talking
having
about
me.
it.
Thanks for watching the movie.
When you are not time capsuling gender norms from 1983, where can folks find you?
I guess bestlauraever.com is my website.
Okay.
That is the best Laura.
My
It is the best
Twitter
Laura
is
ever.
also best Laura ever.
Okay.
I'm very brand consistent.
Beautiful.
Nice.
And yeah, that's the best
You got the
way.
same logo between the two, between your Twitter
I
page.
think I have different pictures.
geez.
just so
Could
nobody
have nailed it.
just so nobody can pin me down. you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Gotcha.
It's like, is she crazy? Is she funny? Is she cool?
She's all of those things.
Yeah. And other than that, I'm just mostly at Whole Foods in LA.
Yeah.
a good
God
place to
bless
be.
Whole Foods. Shahir, when you're not being literal Mr. Mom, where can folks find you?
You can find me momming it up at shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matt, I'm not going to, when you're coming up with puns that I can no longer match, where can people find you?
You can find me at Matthew Kroll, MATTHEWKROL.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Skeletor, 4 PREZ, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. I am not all matched up on my brands, Laura.
Get on that.
I know. Thank you, Michael Keaton. Thank you, Mr. Mom. Thank you, Laura Murphy, for coming
Thank
on.
you,
Thank
guys.
you, Laura.
And we will see you guys next week.